So welcome to RefineM Lunch and Learn for November. So here is the agenda for today's webinar. We are going to talk about the recipe for successful project delivery. We'll talk about how do you create that recipe, and I will talk about what is my recipe, and so that you can pick from some from here and maybe make your own recipe. Okay, so that's what we are going to do today. And for some of you who are first time joining, this is the webinar that we do first week of every month. We have also signed up with projectmanagement.com, and we will be delivering once every quarter a webinar through projectmanagement.com. So our next webinar with projectmanagement.com will be on 9th January. So that's what but December will be again on first Wednesday of the month. But after that, January will be through projectmanagement.com. You will get the notifications if you have signed up for the if you have joined, I guess you have signed up for that. So let's stop a little bit here, pause, and I would like you to share what are your expectations from this webinar, to get a different perspective, to learn what you can share for success. Very good, very good, very good. Jewels and new info for regarding project success. Yeah, okay, very good, very good, excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, all right, all right. So many of you may know about me who have joined my previous webinars, and now this one I'll be talking more about my project management experience, working with different teams, delivering successful projects, helping project managers, helping teams to do the project management in the way that was right for them. And also, I recovered many projects that were failing. Probably a dozen of them, and they were like multi-million-dollar projects, and they went off track, and there were a lot of issues with those projects, and I was called in to fix those projects. And believe me, there is a lot of learning from those kind of engagements. It's very risky, and on some of those, when they were handed over to me, I was very, very nervous because it was some of them was really, really bad shape. But there was a tremendous learning from those engagements and working with those teams. So I just wanted to elaborate on my experience with project management in last 30 years or so. Okay. So what's new at RefineM? We keep doing something new at RefineM every, quite often. So, so webinars that is of your interest. So we are going to have 2 agile related webinars coming up in December and January. In December, we are going to talk about agile maturity. So how do you know how mature the agile teams are? What are the things that the team is doing well? What are the things that need to focus on? And how you demonstrate that the team is getting mature, more and more mature. So we'll talk about that in the webinar on December 5th. And then on January 9th, as I was talking earlier, we'll be talking about backlog or story grooming, and that will be through projectmanagement.com, January 9. Projectmanagement.com is setting up this in their system. So as soon as they have set it up, we'll have it on our website too, and you will get notified in our next email blast that goes out maybe in next couple of weeks or so. So we have several other trainings and classes that we keep adding and keep delivering. The new thing is about our PMP test simulator. We are actually giving 2-day free trial for the simulator. So if anybody is preparing for the PMP exam, this is something that they can try, and if they like, then they can subscribe and use the simulator and pass the test. We continuously add new questions. Now we are on a project working with a PMP instructor to add some more questions to our database. So we keep doing that often and keep increasing our questions data bank. So what is the recipe for successful project delivery? So let's talk about that. And as my other webinars, I would like it to be very, very interactive. So let's think about that in general terms. You know, some of you may cook, right? Or some of you may have your parents or grandparents or grandma cooking, and and you may be thinking about that, what they do, how they make it so good, so what is their recipe, so what do you think, why one should use a recipe when cooking? Why one should use a recipe when cooking? Anyone? To produce desired results. Okay, very good. To get the balance of ingredients and flavor. Okay, very good. Help ensure success. Okay. Okay, what else? Why use recipe when cooking? Anybody else? Consistency. Okay. Okay. Avoid bad result. Tried and true. Okay, yeah, that's true. Avoid rework. Yes. Yes. Avoid rework. Stability. Avoid waste. Right. Right. Avoid waste. That just came to my mind. Avoid waste. Yeah. Stability. Yeah. Those are some of the things. Yeah, we all know that, right? Say very good. Very good. So recipe includes just the right amount of ingredients. So we know that, okay, these are the right ingredients, the right amount of ingredients. So you can look at the recipe, how much of this you need, how much of that you need. So say there's a right amount of ingredients that you can get from recipe. And also this consistent, somebody were talking about consistency. Greg was talking about consistency, stability. So, and you get the results, get the same results most of the time. Sometimes it may mess up, but most of the time, more or less, you get the consistent same results every time. And the other part is that anyone can pick up that recipe and start using it. That's a big part of recipe. If the recipe is written down, you can follow. Sometimes I cook new things, so I take the recipe and just follow it. Okay, so I need not be an expert cook or chef, right? But if I just take up the recipe and we can start using it, sometimes it happens that it may not come out perfect first time, but maybe second, third time it may come out perfect. So that's another good thing about recipe, that anybody can pick up and use it and start creating that dish, or to start making the dish. So now think about, what is the recipe for successful project delivery? So relate that to projects. Relate this real life thing to project. So what do you think will be a recipe for successful project delivery? I'm going to talk about my recipe, but I wanted to hear what's your recipe. So what will be that? Yeah, you're typing or thinking. I know it takes little time for the results to appear here on the chat box. Everybody is working toward the same defined goal. Okay, very good. Very good. Proper requirement gathering. Very good. Very good. Very good. Anybody else? Engage the sponsor. Okay. Resource availability. Yeah, so yeah, now I see good process, good team, good tools. Yeah, so there are ingredients. There's a process, uh, repeatable process. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, okay. So so let's think about today's environment before I start talking about my recipe. Today's project environment. So in today's project environment, it is not enough just to deliver projects successfully. What else is needed? That there's the expectations have increased. Expectations are more from project managers. It's faster. You need to deliver it faster. So not only meeting the timeline, but delivering faster to achieve the time to market, profitability, things like that. Using fewer resources, we know that resources are always in high demand. There are always more people needed than you have the people, so fewer resources. For example, project managers, you as a project manager, you may be needed. You manage so many projects, right? I have yet to see somebody who just manages one project at a time. So as a project manager, you manage so many projects, and with a more limited budget. So there's a expectations are growing and the resources are reducing, including your time, what you spend. So let me ask this question. How many projects usually you manage at a time? Usually you manage at a time. So no, I'm not looking for extremes. I'm looking for a general average if you want to take. So how many projects you manage at a time? 2 or 3, okay. 5, okay. 3, okay. Yeah, yeah. That's very common. Like, and guess what? If organization needs to do more project, they will just pass it on to you. You know, they may not even ask you that, can you do it or not? They say, here is one more project you have to manage. So as a project manager, what's your recipe to make a project successful with highly optimized processes, highly optimized processes? So it's a finding the right balance, so if you use too many processes to deliver your project, then it's wasting time and resources of which may be your time, or you may not be able to meet the needs of the organization. So because if you use too many processes for your project, and sometimes so there are PMOs and they may require you to use the PMO's governance process, as Carol is saying. So what do you do? No, but there are ways to do that, to handle that part, and I'll talk about that as well. And in fact, if there is a time later, I'll tell you a real story that that I helped one of the project managers in Dell to deal with it. And or if there are too few processes, if you skip some critical processes, then you are introducing too many risks. So if you use too many processes, you are wasting time. If you use too less, then you are using risk. So where is the sweet spot, right? Sweet spot means you're not using too many processes and you're not also skipping key things. So that's where the sweet spot is going to be, okay? So so my recipe approach comes from my experience in project management. As I was talking in the beginning, I have accumulated a lot of experience in last 30 years. And I have seen that when this a sweet spot processes, like a set of processes are used, the projects succeed. I have seen it consistently. I have seen it over long period of time, that I can say with confidence that if they are used, the projects succeed. And also I know, as I was talking about the failing projects, so when I take over the failing projects, I say, okay, what's going on this project? And then what is the root cause of this project getting into trouble? What is the root cause? Maybe there are multiple root causes. And from those root causes, maybe I recovered one project, I recovered second project, I recovered third project, and so on. Then I started seeing a pattern. Oh, most of the times projects fail because of these 2 or 3 things that were not done correctly and consistently. That is why the project went into trouble. And that was very consistent, very, very consistent. So based on that, and also I apply some of the lean principles to keep the process set to minimum, avoid waste, right? Keep it to the high value. So do only things that are high value, that don't do things that have low value. So that was another idea that came up, and applied. So I created a set of processes or my recipe, and then I started applying. So I created this about 10, 12 years ago. Okay, and for last 10 years I have been applying this. So I apply this whenever I get into a new engagement. For last 7 years, I have been running my own company, and I have done several consulting engagements, several training engagements. So on all consulting engagements and all training engagements for custom training, for something that is a standard training, this may not apply, but some very custom trainings and consulting. So I go with this, my recipe, and say, this is my recipe to create successful projects, and we'll start from here. And then we see the environment or see the situation with the team or the organization, and then make a recipe, start from my recipe and create their recipe kind of thing. And then apply that and use that and help them use that. So I have seen applying it in different organizations, different teams, and getting results from that, and that strengthened my confidence in my recipe. So what is that? So it is, I call it essential gear for project managers, something that every project managers need to have. What is this? Is a package of 8 critical project management processes. 8. Okay, just see, just keep that number in mind. 8 critical project management process. And what I did is I identified those processes and say, okay, I'm going to use them again and again. So I need to have some templates, because that's how the processes get implemented. Okay, so if you have a process for, let's say, doing the stakeholder analysis, for example, I will cover that. So so what's the template for doing it? Because the templates are good for consistency, and all the learning that you get from one project or a couple of projects, you can modify those and optimize those, and then for the next one you have a better template. So templates are kind of things that, okay, this is how you do the things, this is the kind of information you capture, this is what you do with the information. So that's why they are important. So those 8 processes are delivered through templates, and also I talk about the best practices and also how to avoid pitfalls. So this essential gear of project managers is my recipe. I've created this as a toolkit. I use it on all my consulting engagement. You can create your own using this, or even if you don't use it, by your own experience, what has worked, you can create your own recipe and templates and say, okay, this is your recipe, which will be fine. And I will give you some of the tips here, how I created and what's mine, so you can go and create yours. So basically everything boils down to just 8 critical processes against so many of PMBOK 6. So we don't need so much. We may need more than 8 on some really large complex projects, but I'll tell you that these 8 are more than sufficient for majority of projects, and I'll give you some parameters around that as we go along. So what are these 8 processes? So these are the 8 things. And if these 8 things are done correctly and consistently, I can guarantee that the project is not going to fail. Project is going to succeed. The key word is they are done correctly and consistently. Some of these things are changing. Some of these things change, like project charter may not change, that stays. But everything else may change. The stakeholder analysis you may have to do again when there's a change in stakeholders. Work breakdown structure may change if there are scope changes happen. Resources may change, schedule may change, communication plan may change, risk register may change based on the risk behavior, and the new risk may added up, the old risk may go up. And then of course, performance reporting is to be done on a frequent basis. So this is, so these are the 8 that if done correctly and consistently, then project cannot fail, I will say. And I have found, and I was telling you about the failed projects. So the things that I did not see in those projects consistently, I'm talking the consistently, that is number 6 and 7. Absence of a good, solid communication plan and risk register, and paying attention towards risks. That I saw, and communication plan was not created. It was not a complete plan because the stakeholder analysis was not done. All stakeholders were not identified. And even if they were identified, it was not known what are their communication needs and expectations from the project, which is part of the stakeholder analysis. So you can see how these things are even intertwined. So those 2 I found very consistently, and I can tell you that most of the projects that go off track, you will see those 2 as common. Beyond those 2, there could be more. Okay, but those 2 I have seen almost in every project that I recovered, that these were the 2 issues. These were the 2 processes that were not followed, and followed correctly and consistently, and the team, and that is why the projects went into trouble. Any question you have here? I would like to give a little pause over here before I move forward and start talking about each one of them. Any questions you have? So I'm giving you a little bit time to write questions if you have. Okay, seems like no one has any questions. So we'll move forward, and if the questions come up, please repeat to the one followed. Yeah, so okay, that's communication plan and risk register. That was, Sonia, that were the 2 that I found consistently missing in the projects that failed. Those are the 2. And in other different projects, other than these 2, there were other things also, but these 2 were consistently problem, or the root causes, if you will. So fitness test, where does this work? Where does this work? So normally this recipe, or the toolkit, I call it toolkit 2, is good for medium-sized projects where number of projects 2 to 6. If you are managing 2 to 6 projects, which most of you are, right? Number of team members is 4 to 8 full-time. It could be many heads, like 8 full-time people means 8 into 40, 320 person hours per week. That's what I'm talking about, right? And duration approximately 4 to 12 month duration project. So if your project falls under this kind of criteria, this works really well. Now, if the projects are more complex, more large, then you may, if project have 30 full-time people, then that's a different ballgame, right? So most of the project, like eight full-time people is a lot. 8 full-time people is a lot. Let me tell you that. In most of the project teams, maybe even if there are 10, 15, 20 people, they are not full-time. They are shared across. So if you add up all of that, their time, 20% of one person, 30% of another person, 50% of another person. Now this makes one full-time, but there are 3 heads, okay? So I'm not talking about how many people, I'm talking about how many full-time people, okay? So if you are in this kind of limitation, it works great. Anything less than this works really great. If it is more than this, then you may have to add some more rigor to your project. Okay, let's move forward. So we are talking about overall size of 16 to 18 team members, if people are working part-time, or 200 person months per year. That's what we are talking about, roughly. Okay. So let's talk about each one of them. So project charter, you know about the project charter part. So I don't have to tell you. Most of you are project managers. You know what the project chart. So in my toolkit, I describe what is a project charter, why you need a project charter, and things like that. You already know about it. And I created a template for it. And what I tried to do is to make these templates very simple, very simple. Now you can say, okay, I can find templates. I go on Google and search on Google, and yeah, you can find hundreds of templates. The problem is that there is an information overload. So if you're looking for a template on project charter, you Google and you will find there is no shortage of that. But then you, as a project manager, if you want to sit down and start thinking, okay, what is what is the thing that is going to work for me? You have to spend some time to figure that out. And I can tell you, these templates that are floating around are not developed by experienced project managers. They are put there by people who may not have a lot of experience, and they just put there to get some publicity and all those kind of things. There are some that are good too. There's some that, but they are difficult to find. So what I have done is created this based on my own experience and what works and what doesn't work, and keeping them simple. So like this project charter template, if you see, there are 10 or 11 sections in this template. And you can, so the template comes is what you are going to fill in these different columns. So they're like project identification, business case, goals, scope, deliverables, milestones, risk, issues, assumptions. That's all. That's all. And project budget and sign off. Very simple. So what I tried to do is to create this simple. So my recipe or my toolkit has very simple template, and I keep updating them based on my experience. And then also I talk about what are the best practices and pitfalls. So this is like, telling the recipe, it will come out good if you did this. If it may not come out, avoid these things, kind of a thing. So what are the best practices in developing the project charter? What are the things that you want to avoid? You want to avoid leaving out key roles. You want to avoid key component and proceeding with the project without approvals. So all of us know it, but sometimes you still do it. So that creates risks, and that need to be avoided. So that's a pitfall that need to be avoided. So for project charter, that is how it looks like. And similarly, the stakeholder analysis, that's the second process that I talked about. So the description of the stakeholders, that's what the part of the recipe and part of the toolkit here. And we talk about how do you do stakeholder analysis. You do the stakeholder analysis by creating a stakeholder register. I don't know how many of you create the stakeholder register. I have not seen it very often. I have seen a list of stakeholders, but not a stakeholder register. And what I found is that a very simple stakeholder register is very, very helpful, is very, very helpful. Particularly the columns like these two columns here, preferred communication and expectations. These two columns are very good, and as a project manager, I would like to know these two attributes of every stakeholder, because this column will help me to develop a very solid communication plan. So I want to make sure that my communication plan addresses needs of all the stakeholders. That's so when we come to the communication plan, I will talk about that. So it includes all the stakeholders, and also it includes the events or activities that are built around the preferred communication preferred communication way, and also make sure I communicate with the stakeholders meeting their expectations. And other three, these are like, these are kind of optional. If I want to do that, I do that. This is a kind of, I say, is a next level of stakeholder analysis, trying to figure out if there are risk holders that are risky to your project, and then trying to figure out, how you deal with those kind of stakeholders. But up to interest here, that's extremely important, and every project manager should do that for every project. And that's so useful, and I have seen that many times this is not done, and that creates problems, or it may result in a lot of changes that may come along, missed communication, things falling through cracks, and surprises. A stakeholder may come and say, this is what he was expecting from this project, and he say, I never heard of that. Well, you're not asked that stakeholder, right? So if you ask the stakeholder and keep a register, and whenever there is a change in a stakeholder, you go and update the stakeholder, and that's why I said it need to be done correctly and consistently. It is not something that need to happen one time. So very important. So I talked about project charter, talked about stakeholder, and there are some best practices and pitfalls. So that I always provide with my recipe and with my toolkit. Always provide what are the best practices, what are the things to avoid when you implement that process. And then the next one after this is work breakdown structure. Another very, very useful process, which many times the project managers skip and go to creating the schedule. And sometimes they build their work breakdown structure within the tool that is used for scheduling, like Microsoft Project, which is fine. That's okay. That's absolutely okay. What tool you use doesn't matter, but you create work breakdown structure. It's important to have work breakdown structure. And why it's important to have work breakdown structure is because it basically documents the scope. So if you are facing problem of scope, managing scope changes, managing scope creeps, maybe you do not have your WBS. Maybe that was missing. Maybe that was not done or updated. So the scope creep or scope issues can be managed very well. So you create this hierarchical structure of work breakdown and start from the deliverable, how to do that, start from the deliverables, break it into next level of deliverables, and then into the work packages, and then into the activities, if you will. And then those things then move to the schedule, and you use resources to figure out your dates. And this is what is the WBS template. So you start with a picture of the hierarchy, and then create this, or if you're doing the tool directly, then you can use the tool. This is used in Excel, and you can use Excel, you can use MS Project or any tool that you might have. So you do that, and you complete up to the who is going to work on this, because it will, what skill is needed to do this job or the activity, and what are approximately start and end date, and who it is assigned to. So based If you take these input, that will help you to create the schedule later. So that's the template for WBS and the best practices and pitfalls. So one of the rules here is use 100% rule. All work should add up to 100%. So that's something which is the rule of decomposition. And also you might have done PMP. Some of you might have gone through this and know about this, what is a 100% rule. And that is something that you need to check all the times. So when you put estimates for the lower level activities, they should add up to the 100%. Whether you put cost or you put time, whatever you put, that need to add up to 100%. So this is some kind of a rule or best practice that need to be followed. And then of course from here, from your WBS, you get your resource needs, what kind of resources will be needed, and then you create your resource allocation and mapping all the, mapping people, equipment and materials needed for each of the activity that was created. You can use a tool to do that, or you can use a spreadsheet or Excel, and you may want to document all your resource needs in a what I called as resource allocation template, that you need how many of different kind of resources you will need. Like you need one project manager, you need third-party vendor, you need infrastructure technical developer, tester or whatever. And how many of those you need based on the task that you have there. So you can add up all that and say, okay, this is how many I need for how much duration I need those many people. So that from that perspective also, you creating WBS is very, very important. And you come back here and get your resources allocation done. And then of course I talk about the best practices and the pitfalls. The last one here is very important. The last one here, keeping resource allocation at 80% maximum. What does that mean is that keep only resource allocation to 80%. If you have full-time person allocated to your project, you assume that he or she will contribute to project only 32 hours a week, not 40 hours a week. And if you keep 40 hours, then that is going to be a problem, because that person has to will not be able to spend 40 hours a week unless he works for 50 hours a week. Then he can spend probably 40 hours a week for your project. But otherwise he will have emails to check, he will have other meetings to go, he may have, there may be company holidays, vacations. There are a lot many things that are not project related, and he or she may not spend that all 100% of his time for the project. So, and many places I have seen people even go lower than 80%. They like assume 30 hours a week, 6 hours day, like 6 hours day, 75% even, and which is a good practice. And so someone saying 70%, excellent. I think that's very good. 80% is a kind of a higher limit. If you are doing 70, you are doing great. You're doing really, you are doing great. So 80% is the maximum. So that's something that you apply. So if you, in your resource sheet, if you get, let us say, if you need 3 people, 3 full-time people, probably you need 4 full-time people, because 3 full-time people, it means 100% of 3 people, which will be like 75% of 4 people, right? So that's how you need to project your resources, and that's very helpful. That's very helpful. So that's another thing that need to be considered as a part of the recipe. And now you have all the things that you need to create your schedule. You have your WBS, which has activities and all those kind of things, and you have your resources. You have secured your resources, and you can go ahead and create your schedule, and you know the dependencies and hard dependencies and soft dependencies, and you can put them together. You can create a schedule. This is one of the template that I use, very simple. then once again, simplicity is something that I'm for it, and I use very simple schedule template to create the template, and this is something. The schedule cannot be simpler than this. Right? Cannot be simpler than this. So very simple schedule, and once again, the best practices and the pitfalls for the schedule, and the middle one here, the estimates in reality, real estimates, right? Real estimates, neither too pessimistic nor too optimistic. And at times I might have lost some business and lost some projects because somebody else might have come and they might have given lower estimates. But I feel that's okay. That's okay. I don't want to go and win the project or win the business with low or pessimistic estimate, and then have difficulty in meeting the customer expectations. That will not be good. That will not be good. So, and if it is too optimistic, then again, do you have a chance of losing the project, or then, because that's not true, that's not correct too. Okay, so that's the kind of a good balance between the two extremes. The next one, communication plan, again, very important process of establishing communication with all the stakeholders, what they need and when they need, what is the purpose of communication. And for this, again, the template that I created is, again, very simple. Very simple template. What is the event that we are talking about? Who is the audience for this? Now, this column here, this need to be matched with the stakeholder register. So there should be at least one row here for each stakeholder. There could be more, like this one is all stakeholders. So this goes to all stakeholder. Okay. So but for each stakeholder, there should be at least one row here to make sure that we are meeting communication needs of every stakeholder. And then what is their expectation, how you're going to do this, and this is their communication preferences. Some people may want face-to-face meetings, some people may do a phone call, and some people may like to have an email. Some people may want you to put your updates on a SharePoint, whatever. So I think it will be good to know, and sometimes you may have to do multiple things, like for example, distributing status updates. You may want to put it on the SharePoint, you may want to email as an attachment, and you may want to also discuss it during the weekly meeting. So you may do it multiple ways, because there are people who have expressed the communication preference in different way. So you want to make sure that this communication reaches to everyone. So you may want to do it in multiple ways. But this is another very simple one-pager communication plan. It cannot be simpler than this. And best practices, about how many channels to access using that formula from PMBOK. Depends upon the number of stakeholders, and more the stakeholders, there will be more channels, and there will be more need for the communication, and the number of rows in your communication plan will increase. Okay. So important is that you complete your stakeholder analysis first. If you did not do that, then you may be missing something on the communication plan. And this is something I told you that I found this not done in the right manner for the failed projects that I recovered in the past, and the risk register, of course. So risks are another thing that were not covered in most of those projects. And to record all the risks, the very simple template that I have is the one that I'm showing over here. Very simple, the description of the risk date. I think this is important. This date is important, the time frame, because the risk is maybe relevant on particular date or for a particular period. Now, after that period is over, that risk may not be relevant. But there are some risks that could be there for throughout the duration of the project, which is fine. That could be some of the risks. But what you need to capture is the kind of a risk date or the range of the date for the risk, the probability. You may start with high, medium, low, but that will do your qualitative analysis. But immediately you want to put, I prefer doing the straight away the percentage of probability and then the impact. And the calculating expected monetary value on days and cost. And and probably we should add a sum or total here. So if you add up all that, that actually gives you your contingency reserve. So how much contingency should you keep for your project? This answers that question. Normally you will say, okay, I'll keep 10%. On what basis? Maybe I have gut feel from the past projects that usually, goes over by 10%. You take that 10% contingency reserve, but where do you put it? You probably enter into your schedule and give that 10% to every task. And believe me, that task will eat up that much time and still you'll be late. Okay. So the idea of doing this is to calculate this and put it as a separate line item in your schedule. So with the team, you're still shooting for your planned date, but then after you add contingency reserve, that becomes your baseline. And that's the baseline you communicate with everybody. And I have done this in multiple projects, and I can tell you the project ended somewhere between the planned date and the baseline date or the cost. It really works well. And one of the caveat about this is that look for all potential risks. So if you have a very small list of risks, then this may not work. So identify all possible risks. Usually a 1-year project may have 20 line items in the risk register as a guideline or more. And avoid risk light. What if a storm came and it wiped off things? Those are risks. Those are risks. But I don't think you can't do much about those. So I will say that really I'll not list them here, unless you are at a place where this is consistent and this happens. Then you need to take care of that. Okay, so I will stop here for maybe about 10-15 seconds. And so I've gone through these 8, and oh, there is one more. Sorry, performance reporting. Yeah, sorry, I should have talked about this. So that you have to do. I'm talking about not status reporting. I'm talking about performance reporting. So there is a difference between the two. Status reporting is what is the state of the project in that point of time. Or there's a weekly status report for the last week. So your focus is last week, but performance is from the start to now where you are, kind of thing. And basically I use earned value method to report performance. So this is my performance reporting template. So each of the major activities, or even it may be good if you take down this top level WBS task or maybe deliverables. You can put it for each deliverables, and you can track it from, if you use your requirement traceability matrix, you can use that. And then these are all here, most of you, if you know about this, earned value management, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to get into the details, because the purpose here is to tell you about the recipe, not go into the details of each one of these ingredients of the components. And once again, what are the best practices for the performance reporting? So I went very fast on all these because I wanted to give you a flavor, give you a kind of a roadmap. This is so my recipe and essential gear for project managers. This is a package of 8 critical project management processes delivered via intuitive templates and handbook. And you can find this to me, and of course this toolkit I created. So this is available on my website to download at a price. But I think what I'm doing is, since you attended my call here, so I want to make it almost free for you, not zero cost, but almost free. So if you order in next 2-3 days by Friday night, you will get 75% off. And I think individual license is, Philip, please confirm. I think it is $99 or something like that, or $89. I don't know, Philip. You can type here in the chat box over here. So you will get almost free. But it's not zero cost. And after that, it's 25%. Because I feel that this provides a lot of value. It provides a lot of value, and so for the value there will be a price, right? So, but if you order, yeah, 89. Okay, so Philip is 89. So probably you have to pay like $15 or something like that. I don't know what will be 75% off price of 89 and 25% of 89. Philip can calculate quickly and tell you. But you can download from the website. If you go on the website, RefineM.com, and we'll provide you this copy of the slide deck, and we'll include this. Okay, in conclusion, to complete projects successfully, focus on bare essential processes. You don't have to worry about others. Execute essentials correctly and consistently throughout the duration. So I talked about 8 of those, right? And you can further refine it for your purpose. Any questions you have? We have about 5 minutes left. So if you have any questions, I can respond to you. Otherwise, I'll flip on some other slides. So our next Lunch and Learn is about agile maturity. That's going to be on December 5. And if you have not registered, you can register for it. Registration is open for that webinar. It's on Wednesday, December 5, 12 to 1 p.m. So you can go on our website and register. As I was telling you, that we have a PMP test simulator. If you or somebody else you know is interested in doing the practice test for the PMP exam, they can go and try it for 2 days, and if they like it, they can subscribe. If they don't like it, that's okay. Provide us feedback, and so we can improve. Yeah, the next one is we have about ACP exam prep coming up soon. So if you're trying to prepare for the ACP exam, this coming up from November 26 to December 2. So this is something that is delivered over the web. So you don't have to go anywhere. You can attend. It's 3 hours each evening for 7 days. So you can attend from your home and prepare for the ACP exam. Okay, and this is about claiming 1 PDU for this webinar. How do you claim PDU for this? This will be included in your slide deck that you will get sometime today. So any question? Any question? And we'll include the URL for the toolkit, all essential gear in the next communication. What you will get, or maybe when you get the slide deck, we'll have it in that slide deck, or somewhere you'll get. And Philip, if you can type the URL here. it is easy to get bogged down in all the processes, right? And Carol, I was actually developing a training program for a construction company in Springfield and Springdale, and we talked about this, and the CEO or the one of the owners there asked me that, what is the minimum if my project managers find even these 8 processes overwhelming, what they should do. So I said, okay, they can come down to maybe 4. And what are those 4? I told them the charter, WBS, communication plan, and risk register. Those were my 4: charter, WBS, communication plan, and risk register. So I will say that becomes is smaller than this small set. Okay, that becomes smaller than the small set. So that is something that they can follow. Okay, that is something that they can follow. And that's I'll say that you start with that, but those 4 are better than not doing anything, because that's where that team was. So not doing anything. But I will say that that should slowly graduate to include other 4. So once you reach to this 8, then those are really sufficient. Now, and many times I am asked, what about change management? I have not included change management here. So that's a question I've asked. I said, well, if you do your WBS right, if you do your stakeholder, you may not need so many, you may not need to deal with changes, because that's where the changes come from. So if you do a good job of identifying all your stakeholders, include them, and create a WBS and create the scope right in the right first time, then you may not need them. But if you need it, then add to this list. I'm not saying that you don't add anything to this list, but this is my recipe that I have used to deliver projects successfully every time. I have never needed a very formal change management process for the projects. I did need how to manage changes, and it was a very simple process. And for changes also, there are, the problem is, how do we deal with hundreds of small changes versus 2 large changes? I don't think there's a problem in managing 2 large changes. Everybody sees them. Everybody understands them, right? The problem is this 100 small changes. How do you manage these 100 small changes? That is where the simplicity comes into play. So what I have done, I always create a contingency for these kind of changes. So based on the type and size of the project, I will allocate 5% to 10% of the budget for these small changes. And that separate then contingency buffer. Okay, that are because of risks. So this is separate budget line item that I keep, and I always talk to the customer, stakeholders, and sponsors. See, you cannot avoid small changes, and I don't want to come back to you again and again. So I'll need a kind of a blanket approval on this, and I will keep you informed whenever such change came. I'll keep a track of it, but then I'm not going through this whole change process. And many cases, most of the cases, people have agreed to it. So that's again another way of simplifying things and avoiding taking every change through the change management process. We are not. Okay, well, we are a couple of minutes over time. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much for attending the webinar. I hope you got something out of it, and you can share this with your group, your team, or your network, and enjoy the rest of your day and the week. And we'll meet next month with agility. Talk about agility. Okay, thank you.